The reunification of probation services is hugely welcome, but there are of course many challenges ahead. Probation reunification comes amid the unprecedented challenge faced by all agencies and the communities they serve in terms of the COVID pandemic and its impact on both individual and family incomes, on health and well-being, and a huge strain on all public services, both statutory and voluntary sector. This in turn follows a long period of reduced investment in public services, including deep cuts to the funding for the justice system, with court backlogs and ongoing restrictions to face-to-face contact increasing existing challenges still further. For women, reunification of probation will follow only 2 months after the implementation of OMIC in all women's prisons. The operational challenges faced by probation professionals, whether from an NPS or CRC background, will include ensuring that role allocation and lead responsibility is clear at all times and women do not fall between two stools. The other agencies on whom probation rely, including prison service and private sector colleagues, as well as third sector agencies and local government, will all be getting used to the new way of working, and clear communications will be essential. Third sector agencies are operating under huge strain, managing new commissioning arrangements and, as ever, chasing funding from multiple charitable sources. Amid a period of inevitable flux, there will be movement of personnel and the need to build new relationships very quickly in order to avoid women falling through the gaps. The government remains committed to its female offender strategy, still aiming to reduce women's imprisonment, yet with a drive to recruit over 20,000 new police officers by 2023, the MOJ now projects an increase of the women's prison population from 3,000 to 4,500 by 2025. If this occurs, clearly, this entails a very significant increase in demand on probation services. We all hope, however, that with continued joint work to implement the female offender strategy, the projection will be wrong. However, the projection itself and the government's decision to invest in 500 new women's prison places may be both confusing and demoralising for a service which has worked hard, with some success, over recent years to reduce the dangerous reliance on imprisonment for women. As well as challenges, there are also significant opportunities ahead, which we can't afford to miss. The National Probation Service has been a strong champion of the work to reduce women's imprisonment at both national and local level. I've seen firsthand how effective regional NPS women's champions can be at achieving change. The reunification, while inevitably disruptive in the short term, will in the long term, I believe, strengthen the position of probation services further, providing that crucial link between frontline expertise and experience and strategic vision and leadership, which can provide a really positive example to other agencies as well as to its own staff. Building on previous work to increase the quality and consistent use of pre-sentence reports, the PSR pilots that are now underway for women and young adults in London offer an important opportunity to understand how best practice can be implemented throughout the system. And forthcoming problem-solving court pilots also offer hope of greater use of community sentences rather than prison, as has been shown in Manchester's Women's Problem-Solving Court. Continued rollout of community sentence treatment requirements is also key. The broader context is not straightforward. We've seen sentence inflation over many years, and the current administration has put forward new measures which are likely to inflate sentencing further, as well as increasing police powers and police numbers. The female offender strategy was a real milestone in policy development because of the priority it gives to reducing women's imprisonment and increasing early intervention and diversion. The Farmer Review for Women is also critical to achieving better outcomes for mothers and their children. I hope that support for these strategies will remain the consensus from the very top all the way down. Sufficient resource must be dedicated to their successful implementation if we're to significantly reduce reliance on prison for women and improve outcomes for both mothers and their children. The new cross-government Concordat on women in the criminal justice system is welcome, but we still need to overcome the difficulty of where government money is spent. Even within the limited resources allocated for justice, very large sums are still being spent on building prisons, while comparatively tiny amounts are invested in the community services needed to deliver change. There needs to be a significant increase in spending across government on specialist community services for women and girls involved in or at risk of involvement in the criminal justice system. And a small amount of investment is also needed in local governance to drive joint work to deliver the whole system approaches on which the female offender strategy relies. Local government has a critical role to play here in co-commissioning specialist services which don't cost the earth but can make all the difference by supporting vulnerable women and girls to achieve positive changes in their lives and those of their children. But of course, agencies aren't sitting around waiting for this increased investment to happen, and strong leadership will be needed to maintain a clear focus on reducing women's imprisonment nationally and locally, and to galvanise effective joint work to achieve this. The expertise and authority of probation services, with that operational and strategic grip, put the newly reunified service in a really strong and highly influential position to help achieve this. There is a huge pool of talent and passion, both within probation and in the other statutory and third sector agencies that probation services rely on. Also, critically, among the women themselves who go through the system, and then go on to make positive use of that experience by acting as peer mentors and contributing to practice development. There is great potential for positive change. If I could see one thing achieved, it would be a transformation in the criminal justice response to women and girls who experience domestic abuse and other forms of violence and abuse, both as victims and offenders. Most women involved in offending or alleged offending have experienced domestic abuse and other forms of violence and abuse. This is often directly linked to their alleged offending, as I've found in my work previously at the Prison Reform Trust and now at the Centre for Women's Justice, to challenge the unjust criminalisation of survivors of abuse. There is a huge overlap here between criminal justice priorities and national and local violence reduction and VAUG strategies. But although the links are recognised by government, this is not yet translated into an effective, coordinated response. The result is missed opportunities to identify and protect victims and to hold perpetrators to account, as well as the terrible injustice of victims being punished and often imprisoned for offences they were driven to commit because of their experience of abuse. This is in stark contrast with the wholesale change in approach that we've seen, quite rightly, in the treatment of trafficking victims who are forced into criminal activity. Probation services are among the leading statutory agencies, in my view, in recognising and responding to the links between women's experience of abuse and their criminalisation. Significant efforts to improve the quality and consistency of pre-sentence reports for women, including any context of abuse, are welcome. However, while this work must continue, it cannot compensate for failings elsewhere in the system. The NPS at national level and through regional women's champions has a critical leadership role to play in multi-agency strategic work in order to support the understanding and expertise of central and local government and also the other agencies such as the police and CPS as to how women's experience of abuse is linked to their offending or alleged offending and how this should change everyone's response throughout the criminal justice journey. This must be done through close joint work with women's specialist services and must include a distinct focus on the experiences of Black and minoritised women and women without recourse to public funds. Change is needed, as we all know, sooner rather than later.